Thank you, Sam and Mashirima. At the Oversight studio, we are joined this evening by Busia County Senator Okia Omtata, Githunguri Lawmaker Gathoni wa Mushomba, and nominated MP John Mbadi, who as well is the chair of the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. They have been itching listening to the conversation at the government studio where Sam, you and Mashirima are. And first to you, Honorable John Mbadi, what's your observation and your response to some of the submissions made by the government delegation at the government studio?
Thank you very much, Ayub. Let me start by saying thank you for welcoming us here or inviting us to this studio to have a conversation on this very important topic. I'm happy that the people of Kenya from last year have been more conscious about taxation issues. But having said that, let me start by saying that in the traditional African society, leaders used to have what we used to call the wise men, and now you can call it wise men and women, who would tell them exactly when things are going wrong. I think President Ruto needs those wise men and women. The level of advisors that he has is failing him. And now look at the people who are representing Kenya Kwanza in the government studio. You listen to them, and I'm happy that they're in another studio and not where we are seated, because I think it would not have been very nice. Some of our reactions would have been a bit condescending. But let me not go in personal. I would like to start by saying this, that listening to their argument about broadening the tax base clearly demonstrates lack of understanding of what is tax base. And I'm shocked that the gentleman from KRA, someone who is very senior in KRA, his understanding of tax base is so wanting. How would you say that motor vehicle tax is going to target those who are not paying taxes as at now? First of all, when you purchase a motor vehicle, over 40% of its value is actually tax. Again, in using that vehicle, we pay a lot of taxes. And even in maintaining it, there are a lot of taxes. So you cannot say that that vehicle, I mean the person who owns the vehicle, is being brought to the tax bracket or to the tax base. Secondly, where is this new tax that is targeting new taxpayers? Even when you talk about VAT on bread, VAT on bread, the 16%, those who are going to pay VAT on bread obviously are paying a lot of taxes on other commodities. So you cannot say that this new tax is targeting Kenyans who are not currently paying taxes. What about VAT on insurance and reinsurance services? As a matter of fact, insurance and reinsurance services, those companies pay a lot of taxes to our economy, including those who even benefit from the same services that they offer. Financial services. I want to tell Ruto, please, the President of the Republic of Kenya, listen to us. Do not treat money transfer as income. Money transfers, I today would want my mother in the village to receive 1,000 shillings, 5,000 shillings, 10,000 shillings. That is my income, which has already been taxed at sometimes 32.5%. What I am doing is just to facilitate or help my mother meet the basic necessities of life, where when she goes to the market and she goes to the shop, she still continues to pay VAT on almost every commodity that she will purchase using that tax. Look at the edible oil, the excise duty on edible oil. Edible oil is basic commodity for the poor household in this country. Now, let me summarize it by saying the following, that the problem with the tax proposals in the current finance bill of 2024 is that it is targeting the low-income earners and the middle-income earners. Beginning with the motor vehicle owners, who are largely going to be affected are middle-income earners, including the commercial vehicles, which is going to make the cost of manufacture very high, including those vehicles which are used in agricultural production. Again, I have just mentioned the VAT on bread, edible oil excise duty. There is also the sugar, We are trying to revive the sugar industry, yet you are now imposing a 16% VAT on transportation of sugarcane to the factories. What are you trying to do? Let me, please, if you allow me just one more minute. You see, I have heard my colleagues talk, and Honorable Bill Okero actually ably put it, that the difference between Kibaki's approach, because Kibaki also came to power when we had economic challenges in our economy, and the difference is that President Kibaki grew the economy, or came up with policies to grow the economy. But something else that has not been mentioned is that President Kibaki emphasized on tax management and tax administration. You remember that those who are working in KRA were rained on, and those who are stealing our taxes, that was reduced to bare minimum. And within 1 year, we had collected triple what was being collected during Moi's time. Those are the kind of innovative ideas that we expect the current regime to employ.
Mheshimiwa Mushombo, na nafasi ya kujibu kwa Kiingereza ama Kiswahili, lakini naona kuna tatizo hapa. Tulikuwa na nafasi kama hii mwaka uliopita ambapo kelele zilikuwa kwamba Rais William Ruto anapania kuongeza tax bracket, yani tax base ya watu ambao wanajitokeza kulipa ushuru. Inaonekana imeshindikana. Ndiposa na kuona umetingisha kichwa wakati kamishna wa KRA anapoeleza kwamba tunalenga wale ambao wana matumizi ya magari, lakini huoni iwapo kuna ushuru mpya umeletwa kueleza kwamba tumeweza kunasa wale ambao hawalipi ushuru ili waweze kuchangia katika mfuko wa kutoza ushuru. Je, tumefikia hapo ama unaona kwamba serikali imeshindwa ama namna gani? Ndiposa tuko katika swala kama hili.
Asante sana kwa kutuleta hapa, kuturuhusu tuja hapa ili tuongee na Kenya, tuwaelezee yale sisi ambayo tunajua na yale ambao tunajaribu ili tusaidie wananchi kunufaisha maisha yao. Kiswahili changu kimeishia hapo.
Asante.
I want to respond to something that I've heard the officer from KRA try to explain, but he has failed terribly, because he was trying to explain why the government of Kenya and the Kenya Kwanza government is expanding the tax base. The tax base means they are trying to come up from up the pyramid to the basic of the pyramid, the down part of the pyramid, where the majority of the people are, who, according to him, have not been traditionally been paying tax. But he's not telling us something. What is the pressure of actually trying to tax everybody in this country? Where is the pressure coming from? Do you want to tell me, or do they want to tell us that they have just realized that they need to tax everybody? No. The pressure is coming from the debts, the foreign debts, the public debts that the Kenya Kwanza government assumed that they would walk over, and only realize along the way that they actually cannot be able to walk over. Now, there's something that they're not telling us, that all this mopping up of all manner of taxes. You know, last year, we cried very loudly, because you remember some of us actually even rejected the finance bill in the National Assembly. And we thought that from the noise that we made last year, things would be better. I mean, the chest dumping of saying it must be done, the finance bill is not going to be touched even to a full stop, you know. And we are seeing the same attitudes and the same narratives. Mutamu bado inaendelea, umesikia watu wakisema hapa, kwa sababu kuna wale ambao bado hawajaelewa kwa nini wananchi wanalia. Wananchi hawalii kwa sababu hiyo ni fashion. Wananchi wanalia kwa sababu wameguzwa. And before I go there, I want to refer to this constitution. And by the way, you forgot to say that I'm the chair of the committee that oversights the implementation of this constitution in the National Assembly.
Okay.
And I want to refer to this constitution, which is the mother law. This constitution, Article 203, says this: before we run to pay debts, the foreign debts, before we run to pay back Eurobonds and whatever else we've been running to do so that we can look nice in the eyes of international community, we must allocate enough money to issues of national interest. Allocation of money to national interest mean areas of security, which is our national interest, areas of food security, national interest, areas of health, education, and environment. Have we done so? No. Why? Today in Parliament, my colleague can tell you, there were 3 groups coming to petition us. Oh, we want money for clinic officers. We want money for, just the other day, the JSS teachers were on the road. And everybody else is complaining. Have we allocated sufficiently to those national areas before we run to pay the Muzungu? So I think the KRA guys are not telling us. The government is not coming out clearly. Why the pressure? Why must we tax even almost eyebrows? Why are we taxing our hair wigs? Why are we taxing edible oil? Why are we taxing motor vehicle circulation taxes? Why are we collecting double levies? You know, levies that have already been collected in another sector, and now we are collecting again. For example, the eco tax. The eco tax is a duplication of another act that already is punishing the manufacturing industry. And then we bring another tax on top. So I want to call out the government of Kenya. Unfortunately, I can only call them out here because they have refused to listen. They have refused to listen to debates in the National Assembly. They have refused to listen to experts that have spoken and written articles in this country. That this constitution, Article 203, only allow us first to allocate money sufficiently and adequately to those areas of national interest. Thereafter, the surplus, we can now, any provision, and I'm reading, any provision that must be made in respect to the public debt and other national obligations. Okay. So that is the Katiba. We made this Katiba. I was part of those people who made this Katiba in 2005, and we must align ourselves to this constitution.
All right.
So this whole panic should stop.
Yes.
And our priority is not the IMF. Our priority is the Wanjiko, who is defined by this constitution, article number 1, as sovereign. That Wanjiko and Khadija is sovereign. We should not run to look like we are bowing to the IMF and abandoning Wanjiko in the street, abandoning Khadija in the street. We must make sure Wanjiko and Khadija is okay, and then we pay the debts.
Thank you. Senator Omtata, you have been the face of the calls against the Finance Bill 2023, now an act. Now here we are again, 2024. Honorable Mushomba talks about the role of Parliament, oversight, where you guys sit in the bicameral Parliament. And it seems that there is this cry that you are not listened to, your voices are not heard in terms of what you want amended in these bills that come before the National Assembly. What then is the option? What's the way out if Parliament is dead against what you guys will say in terms of the other ideas that you have regarding the cost of living in Kenya and the cost of doing business generally?
First of all, thank you for having me. I'll take off where my sister just left off. We have a constitution in this country. So we cannot be said that we are being ignored. We have a constitution in this country. And within that constitution also there are measures to punish these people. There's going to come a time when we shall put them in jail for what they are doing today. Across the world, President Ruto was in South Korea the other day. I think he's still there. Let him ask himself how many presidents have been, ex-former presidents of South Korea have gone to jail. As he wants to admire South Korea, he must not decide whereby rogue presidents are jailed and punished.
President Park was the last.
Yes, and so does President Ruto want to be jailed when he leaves office? That's the question he should ask himself. He's not almighty. He must obey the Constitution. There's no way out. And me, in discussing this bill, I would like everybody to go to the website of the National Treasury at www.treasury.go.ke/budget-1/. You will find 5 books there which contain the budget estimates of the current government that we are supposed to be discussing, but instead we are being taken the wrong way to discuss the Finance Act or the Finance Bill, which is premature. You cannot have a finance bill without a budget you want to finance. You must have the budget, then now come up with measures to finance that budget. But we are dealing with measures to finance what doesn't exist. But I want us to look at the budget estimates. The total number is about 4,500 pages. Right now, I've read through all of them. And on my first reading, I've identified about 100 billion shillings that is being stolen. 100 billion. Mm-hmm. And in two items, one of them is the repayment of debt. There's about 40 billion shillings there that you cannot explain. Double repayments. When you come down, there's other thing. They call them other expenses. Now, other expenses of what? Our budgeting law, the law, not even a policy, the law requires that every item be identified, what you are going to finance. Mm-hmm. So you cannot have other expenses. No, you must tell us this 10 shillings is going to buy this glass. So the question of other expenses is what you call budgeted corruption. So of that, in that component alone, other expenses out of those 4,500 pages that are up there is 52 billion shillings. So together, 40 billion plus 52 billion, you get 92 billion. That is being stolen, being placed here to be stolen. You see? And so you cannot be talking about there not being enough money that we want to pay, tax everybody, whatever. Yeah. What we need is fiscal discipline. And I just want to give you an example.
Oh, before you proceed, Senator, you have mentioned a very critical process of our budget-making process.
Yes.
And the constitution that Honorable Wamushomba holds here, and we all believe in because of its supremacy, gives the Parliament the power to amend the budget. And this largely falls in the context of the formulation, adoption, execution, and the control, the 4 stages, 2 before, 2 after. And Parliament is knowledgeable of this fact in regards to the presentation made by the Control of Budget when she appeared before the National Dialogue Committee at the Bomas of Kenya, where her own salary was tripled, yet she was the only officer in that capacity. These are issues that have been flagged. You are the members of Parliament. You can't turn away from this blame of this budgeted corruption and what's contained in the budget that MPs in the Budget Committee do overlook. How do you then clean up your face as the representatives of the people?
First of all, for some funny reason, the budget doesn't come to the Senate. But you are fighting for it to come to the Senate, because if you look at Article 249, Clause 3 of the Constitution, it's very clear. It states that Parliament shall ensure that independent commissions, independent officers and constitutional commissions are funded properly. And the estimates of these commissions and independent officers are managed under Article 221. Where budget estimates are broadened. So the mere fact that they are introduced in the National Assembly, like it is said under Article 109, I think it's Clause 5, that money bills will only be introduced in the National Assembly, does not mean that money bills will only be considered in the National Assembly. And so the Senate sits and watches this nonsense going on. And so we are still fighting to make sure that the budget goes through both houses. Mm-hmm. That practice where they have been misreading the Constitution must come to an end. Now, the other thing, there's this thing called the Budget Office. Go and look at how much money went to Ndindi Nyoro's constituency for roads. He chairs the Budget Office. They go and make deals with the Treasury, and then you see Parliament debates their report. Parliament does not read the 4,500 pages that I've referred to. They read that thing, and then they bring a report to Parliament. Then Parliament debates the report. And that's why the problem is. The MPs never get a time to walk through the estimates. They are walked through by somebody else who is captive to the Treasury. Just look at the MPs. Look at the MPs who sit in the Budget Office and how much money they allocate to projects in their constituencies. And look at other MPs. I'm talking about the National Assembly. Forget about the Senate. Just the National Assembly. You will see why there's a big problem. So that animal called the Budget Office has been captured by Treasury, the Treasury mandarins, and they're in cahoots. So when they peruse these things, they see no evil, and therefore they bring a very rosy picture of what is happening. Yeah. And that's why then where we lose it. Because then Parliament debates the report of the committee, the departmental committee. It does not debate the raw data. So I would not blame the MPs.
Yeah.
Personally, yes.
No. Mheshimiwa, nataka uzuie hapo kidogo, lakini nataka kuna swala ambalo tutataka uthibitishe baadaye. Tunakwenda mapumzikoni kidogo, lakini hili swala ambalo umezungumzia kwamba kuna budgeted corruption katika utungaji wa sheria kama hizi ambazo ni za kutengeza bajeti na vile vile mswada, tunataka uthibitishe, kwa sababu umegusia swala ambalo huwezi kuthibitisha na tungependa uweze kuthibitisha kuhusiana na hizo shilingi bilioni 100 ambazo nasema kwamba zimeingizwa katika mfuko ambao pengine ni wa kufanyia ubadhirifu ama ufisadi. Lakini kwa sasa nafikiri tunakwenda mapumzikoni kidogo na kupeleka kwake Olive Barrows na Lulu Hassan watueleze mengi kabla ya kuendelea na mjadala pamoja na wageni wetu siku ya leo.
Naam, shukran sana Nimro Tabu na Ayub Abdikadir. Ama kwa hakika jumbe ni nyingi na wengi wameonekana kuweza kutamaushwa na yale matamshi ya naibu kamishna wa mamlaka ya ushuru ya KRA hapa ndani ya studio. Maoni ni mengi
mengi. Naona tu SMS Morisore. Labda tusomee kadhaa.
Na mjumbe ni nyingi hapa, anasema hiyo government studio ina mambo, they are telling us a lot of nothing. Hizi ni baadhi ya jumbe ambazo tunazipata kwa hivi sasa. Wengi inaonyesha tu ni kwamba Wakenya wamegadhabishwa. Kila mmoja anaonekana kubebwa mzigo ambao katu ama kamwe hauwezi kubebeka. Mtazamaji, baada ya muda usio kwa mrefu tarudi na mengi zaidi, usiende mbali.